Hi everyone, welcome to week 4. So this week our quiz will open and the quiz is going to be on everything that you've done so far. So the quiz opens on Friday and it is open for 1 week only. So you're open for 1 week only and it's going to be a combination of a lot of different things. So you've got all those modules you've done so far, you've got some multiple choice, you've got some word matching in there. You also have some short answers and some long answers. Just remember, if it's a short answer or a long answer, then you'll need to actually put some information there. It's not just sort of one line, etc. So that's really important. It doesn't need to be referenced, but it is not open book. It is a closed book. So you need to have the responder software downloaded. And good luck, everyone. So it's open for 1 week only. And make sure you watch those revision clips I put up. I put one revision clip up there and sort of gives you a bit of an idea of the areas to study. Okay, so this week is going to be all about fitness. So it's going to be about why we need to exercise, why exercise is important, and what's some of the benefits of exercise. What's the government recommendations? How much exercise do we need to be doing each week? And sort of we're going to go through the different energy systems and what substrates they actually use. When we talk about substrates, it's like thinking about like petrol or fuel in your car. So a substrate could be such as creatine phosphate, which is stored in the cross bridges of the skeletal muscle. It could be something like glycogen, which is a stored form of glucose, which is stored in your muscles and also a little bit in your liver. It could be fat. We've got plenty of fat stores there as well. So it might be sort of a combination of different substrates. We talk about substrate utilization. So we're going to be looking at the different energy sources and systems that we use during physical activity. And it really depends on the type of physical activity that you're doing, but also the duration. So it depends on the time, type, and the intensity. So we often think about something called the FIT principle, which is the frequency, intensity, time, and type. And we think about the intensity, but obviously if something is a really high intensity, we can't keep that up for very long periods of time. We also look at what's the importance of things such as carbohydrates and fats and proteins. Now, in the final assessment, which is not due for quite a few weeks, that one is going to be a video presentation. And one of the things that you need to talk about is your different macronutrients that you're using for physical activity, because we're going to be using all of them for physical activity, but we have set recommendations or guidelines in terms of what we need to be having depending on the type of activity that we're doing and also what we're training for, etc. We'll also be exploring things such as adenosine triphosphate, ATP, and you might remember that from your biochemistry sessions. So ATP, adenosine, tri being 3 phosphate ions, and we'll also be looking at creatine phosphate, and that's going to be the first substrate we're looking at in the anaerobic system. And we're going to be looking at those systems, and if this is all sort of sounding like something completely foreign to you, just watch this clip a few times, do the readings. There's also some really good clips that I've put up within this subject in your learning materials. There's some great little short clips there for, I'm just going to check there. They should be on this page. These are great because they just do a really nice little overview of what the different energy systems actually are. So I'm just going to check that they're there. And yeah, they're great. Just check. They are great little clips. Yes, they are. There's some clips there. Actually, there's a couple there, but I'm also going to throw up some other ones in our announcements as well, because they will really help with the information. Okay, so I'm going to give you some extra clips to have a look at, because there's some really nice little clips that will really help you have an understanding of these energy systems. And you will get questions in your quiz on your energy system. So do the readings for this particular topic and watch this clip a few times, etc. As I said, we're going to be looking at all of this in today's session. So in terms of, let's go back and look at what the physical activity levels are in Australia. And they were, we'll come back to the benefits of fitness, but we basically spend, this is from the evidence from the Bureau of Statistics, around about 33 minutes of activity per day. Move me a little bit so my head is not too, there you go. About 33 minutes per day of doing physical activity. Around 60% of adults do less than 30 minutes and about less than 20% do more than 1 hour each day on average. So there are some guidelines about how much physical activity we need to be doing based on our age as well. And this is quite a lot for children, and there's certain guidelines for each age group, and then we get to older adults, and we will be discussing older adults when we get into the stage of the lifespan. We'll be looking at those, and we can see that things such as not only huffy-puffy exercise, so cardiovascular exercise, we need to do some kind of strength training, so resistance training, where we load the muscles, and muscles will pull on bones, and therefore will help to improve bone mineral density, or when we get older, help to maintain bone mineral density. So very, very important. As we get older, we'll also have to incorporate things such as balance. So balance starts to go as we get older. So also flexibility. So range of motion around the joints, it's called the range of motion, ROM, starts to diminish as we get older. So we'll be looking at each of those in terms of the coming weeks, but let's have a little bit more about where we're actually at in Australia. So more than half of Australian adults do not need the physical activity guidelines, which is interesting, isn't it? So you think about over half are not meeting the physical activity guidelines. And basically 44% of working adults spend most of their day sitting. So that's a bit of a problem, isn't it? So then most of their day is sitting. It's responsible physical activity, often called, or sometimes called your PAL, so physical activity level. It's responsible for 6% of cancer burden in Australia. That's only second to tobacco smoking. So it's linked with some of those non-communicable diseases, so things such as non-communicable means you can't catch it, diabetes and bowel cancer, uterine cancer, dementia, breast cancer, coronary heart disease, stroke, and the list goes on. So one of the things to think about is physical activity can be a prescription, just like that we would talk about dietary intake or supplement intake. So physical activity is extremely important for overall health, and there are many benefits for physical activity. So I want you just to think about what are some of the benefits for physical activity. I'm going to throw some of these up here for you. And before we get to that, what was the impact of COVID? So we think about physical activity levels in COVID may have increased for some people and decreased for others. I know in New South Wales, in Sydney, where I am, that we were encouraged to exercise, to get outside, and because all the gyms are closed, a lot more people were exercising, etc. But there's a lot of people weren't allowed outside or only for a period of time. So COVID added an extra barrier to being active, especially for organised sports. So you think about for many children, they weren't at school, maybe there wasn't organised sport happening, so there was gym closures, lockdowns, a lot more prevalence for online, not only online learning, but also online physical activity. So lots of apps came up, lots of streaming services. So we really had to change how we exercised, how often, and and maybe people's activity levels diminished significantly. And you often hear people say, I put on 4 or 5 kilos during COVID. This is a common thing that I hear a lot in the clinic situation. We have patients coming in saying, well, in COVID, I put on some extra weight. Really affected school children. So the Ozplay study found that almost 3 in 4 adults stayed active in 2020, but only 1 in 6 kids exercised outside of school. And that could have been for a variety of reasons, but obviously with the lockdowns, loss of community sport, children not going to school, maybe, you know, there was a lack there as well. So I've been talking about the benefits of physical activity, and this is a really important slide. So I want you to really take your time, pause this, have a look at some of the benefits of physical activity. Because if we were to prescribe this, or let's say we could give you all of this and it was in a pill form, or let's say a food, wouldn't you find that lots of people would actually go, yep, I want that. I want everything that's on there. And this is just a short list. There's a lot more things that it can actually do. So being physically active helps to reduce the risk of disease in a number of ways. Moderate physical activity improves resistance to infection, so you're less likely to get a cold. However, when you already have, let's say, just a common cold, can you exercise? Yes, but low intensity. We find that when you do high intensity, exercise is actually a stress, and it's a good stress on the body. However, when you place a lot of extra stress on the body by high intensity exercise, because your body goes backwards before it goes forward, so you're going to diminish in terms of your immunity. So training a heavy session, or say running a marathon or something that's intense exercise, can actually have an impact on your immune system. So what we often find is people that have run marathons, afterwards we find that they do get sick, or maybe a triathlon, even maybe sometimes even a fun run, you might find that they don't feel as good and they're more prone to infection. So if you get a cold, fine to do a little bit of exercise, low intensity, keep yourself warm, but avoid like resistance training. So going to the gym, training hard, really getting your heart rate up. So there's infection. It also going to improve your cardiovascular health, helps to modulate blood pressure, which means helps to reduce blood pressure. So it helps to modulate or to regulate your blood pressure. We've already talked about some of the cancers it can reduce. And just to remind you, that was cancers such as bowel cancer, uterine cancer, breast cancer. So they're the major ones in terms of reduction cancer. Does it help with all cancers? Yes, to a degree, because it will actually improve the overall systems, but there's actually some definitive research with those particular cancers. Helps to prevent osteoporosis through improved bone density. Now, I was just saying before, muscles pull on bone. When muscles pull on bone, so let's say you lift something really heavy, the muscle pulls on the bone, and therefore you improve your laying down of bone mineral density, so improves that bone mineral density, or helps to also to maintain it. It can also help, and this is a really good one, it helps with healthy body composition and weight management, because when you exercise, you can build more muscle. When you build more muscle, it means there's less percentage body fat. The more muscle you have, the higher the metabolic rate goes, but obviously there's a ceiling on it. It's not like you can have a metabolic rate of a 20-year-old if you're, say, 50. But what it actually does is the fitter you are, you burn more fat even at rest. So if you're sitting down now listening to this, you are burning fat. Fitter people burn more fat even at rest. Fitter people burn more fat even at rest, especially if you have more muscle mass. So the more muscle mass you have means it's like, you know, you're ticking over, the clock is ticking over, it's faster. So it's like you almost like imagine a car and the petrol's like going through, it's chewing through it faster, which is what you want, because when you're at rest, you're burning lots of fat. And we have plenty of fat to burn, and it's there for very important reasons. It's there for immunity, it's there for protection around our organs, etc. And it also has some, you know, very important functions. But also that we don't have a lot of glycogen. So glycogen is a stored form of glucose. It's branched chain, it's actually compact, and we want to be able to burn some fat. Okay. Also, what it does is you have more muscle mass, you have a reduced risk of diabetes, which is great. We want to have a reduced risk of diabetes. So especially resistance training. So resistance training, I'm talking about lifting a weight. So lifting up, you might do lunges and you've got some hand weights and you're doing 10 lunges on each side with 10 kilo weights in each hand, and or 5 kilos, whatever it might be. That actually is improving your muscle mass, which means that you've got less chance of diabetes. Very important for someone who is already a type 2 diabetic, because, and we're going to look at type 1 and type 2 diabetes later. Type 1 diabetes, there's could be a genetic component, but also maybe there's been an autoimmune issue earlier in life. So type 2 diabetes, we can really help to manage that through exercise, but particularly resistance training. Now, the bottom one, stress management and improved mood. Positive effects on your neurotransmitters. Now, they are also going to be affected by your protein intake. They're going to be, it's a positive intake with amino acids, but we really want to, you know, you're going to feel good. And, you know, when you exercise, it gives you that kind of serotonin boost. So you feel that happy, feel-good hormone. You get a bit of dopamine and noradrenaline or norepinephrine, and you feel good. So if you just, it doesn't have to be going to the gym. It could be going for a walk. It could be swimming in the ocean. There's a whole range of reasons why this improves your, not only your cognitive function, but it improves your mood. So the other thing is it actually improves your cognition in your brain. It helps to get your left and right hemispheres interrelating so that they can actually connect. Because do you feel sometimes that your brain just doesn't connect properly, like things just don't go in? Exercising before you start doing, say, a lecture or something can actually enhance your cognition and improve the way that your brain functions. So as you can see, there's lots and lots of benefits for exercise. There's also lots of risks of being sedentary. So the 5 leading global risks for mortality and non-communicable diseases, so these are called NCDs, in the world are high blood pressure, tobacco use, high blood glucose levels, and physical inactivity, and also overweight and obesity. But isn't that interesting? It's one of the 5 leading global risks for non-communicable diseases in the world. And exercise is free. You don't need to go to a gym. You can go for a walk. You can be at home and do 10 squats, 10 lunges, and 10 push-ups. That's a form of exercise. It's body weight training, and it is going to improve the way that you feel and also helps to reduce those non-communicable diseases. So these factors are responsible for raising the risk of chronic diseases and, you know, across all countries and all incomes. So physical activity is the second greatest contributor to tobacco smoking, which I mentioned before. So it comes down to energy in and energy out. And unfortunately, during COVID, a lot of us maybe had a lot more energy coming in because people were at home and maybe they were cooking more. Maybe people were getting deliveries of food and not so much energy going out. So it's just like, think of it like a set of scales. And on the energy out, on this side over here, on the right, the energy out, we have a thing, this is here, the BMR is called your basal metabolic rate, that big part of the pie chart there, that's your basal metabolic rate. And that makes up between 60 and 75% of your daily energy expenditure. We also have the physical activity level, which is here in the smaller green. That's the physical activity, and the thermic effect of food is in the blue, and that makes about sort of 10 to 15%. Now, physical activity, there is a ceiling on that, so it's not like you can just you know, keep exercising throughout the day. It's not going to go that much more. So BMR, the basal metabolic rate, this is based on your age, your gender, and your weight. And as you get older, after 30 years of age, it starts to actually diminish. So your metabolic rate gets slower and you tend not to eat, need as much food, but people tend to eat more and exercise less. Maybe, you guys are all students and maybe you're sitting down a lot of the time. So maybe if you're not sitting, you're working, etc. So you don't maybe have that much time for physical activity. But it's about being consistent with physical activity and trying to get as much as you can throughout the day. So this is sort of how we calculate on that, back to that slide there. On this side here, it's based on all of these factors. Now, if you're going on to study lifespan nutrition, you'll be going through this in more detail. So we're just going to look at what's sort of some guidelines of physical activity. And this, again, is taken quite a few years ago, but I'm just going to flip through to here. And it just kind of gives you a bit of idea. And I still quite like this because it kind of gives you an idea of what we need to do to reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease. So the sports, you just get, just doing any kind of activity 2 or 3 times a week. It might be you go and play football, etc., or you might be doing resistance training a few times a week, or gardening or swimming, etc. You need to accumulate about 30 minutes a week of 5 to 6 days a week. It's not 30 minutes a week, 30 minutes a day of 5 to 6 days per week. And that could be going for a walk. And it doesn't have to be a fast pace, but if you throw in some hills, that's even better. Maybe in bike riding, do some stair climbing. It could be a whole range of different things as well. One thing that we do want people to do is to increase incidental activity. And this could be as simple as, I don't know, rather when you come into uni, you take the stairs rather than the escalator. That you look for opportunities to do incidental activity. And, it's interesting. Turning a page on a book is more energy is expended than flicking through your phone. So we just sit there and flick through our phone. So think about anything that you can do that's going to increase incidental activity. Remote controls. Can you get up and change? I don't think I can even know how to do it on my television anymore, but we used to say, get up and actually change the channel, because you used to be able to change the channel. I don't think you can anymore. I think it's an interesting point. But just remember, this was published in 1996. There is more relevant or more up-to-date, but I just like this because it was a really nice little thing to show you. At the top is to only occasional is TV, computers and games. Well, we probably all spend our life on computers and phones. So now, we're in this cyber age, and we need to think about, how can I get more physical activity into my day? And it's not always easy. So having planned sessions, and one thing that I like to do is I like to plan my sessions. So I write them in my diary in advance. I've got a bit of an idea. And if I only got 30 minutes and I go, right, my brain's falling asleep, I'm just going to go for a walk. By the way, I'm an exercise physiologist and taught exercise science for over 25, 30 years. When we come back, we're going to have a look at the energy systems.